The world watches with bated breath, as the tension in the air is almost palpable. People from all walks of life, from bustling city centers to quiet suburban homes, are glued to their screens, anxiously awaiting the latest updates. As tensions escalate between the United States and Iran, the flags of both nations flutter in the wind, symbolizing a complex history of conflict and diplomacy. Military parades showcase the might of each nation, a stark reminder of the stakes involved. Recent briefings by National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan to President Biden have cast a dark cloud over global security. In the White House Situation Room, the gravity of the discussions is evident, as top officials deliberate over potential courses of action. The topic: the potential for American airstrikes against Iranian nuclear facilities. Fighter jets roar into the sky, a powerful display of military readiness, while aerial footage of past airstrikes serves as a chilling reminder of the destructive power at play. This development, while concerning, is not entirely unexpected. Analysts on news channels dissect the geopolitical implications, drawing on historical footage to provide context to the current situation. The long and tumultuous history between the US and Iran adds layers of complexity to the unfolding events. It underscores the growing alarm within the international community over Iran's persistent pursuit of nuclear capabilities. Aerial footage of Iran's nuclear facilities highlights the advancements made, while scenes of international diplomats at conferences reflect the global concern and ongoing efforts to address the issue. The possibility of the US conducting military strikes against Iran is a clear indication of the gravity of the situation. US military forces are seen preparing for deployment, underscoring the seriousness of the potential conflict. Satellite imagery of strategic locations in Iran further emphasizes the high stakes involved. It signifies a breakdown in diplomatic efforts and a growing belief that Iran may be on the verge of achieving its nuclear ambitions. Diplomatic meetings, marked by tense expressions, reveal the strain on international relations. Footage of nuclear reactors in Iran serves as a stark reminder of the potential threat. This potential shift in US policy towards a more aggressive approach carries significant risks and uncertainties. Military strategy discussions in war rooms highlight the meticulous planning required, while footage of fighter jets in formation showcases the readiness for potential conflict. The world is now on high alert, fearing a potential conflagration in the Middle East with global ramifications. Bustling Middle Eastern cities continue their daily lives under the shadow of potential conflict, while protesters holding anti-war signs voice their fears and opposition. The stakes couldn't be higher. World leaders gather at summits, their discussions carrying the weight of global security. Aerial footage of the Middle East at night, with its sprawling cities and strategic locations, underscores the region's critical importance. A miscalculation or misstep could ignite a conflict with far-reaching consequences, further destabilizing an already volatile region and potentially drawing in global powers. Military drills in the desert demonstrate preparedness, while international news reporters discuss the potential for conflict, highlighting the global attention on the situation. The situation demands a cautious and measured response. The United Nations meeting in session reflects the collective effort to find a solution, while peace talks with international delegates emphasize the importance of diplomacy. The international community must work together to find a peaceful resolution. Global leaders shaking hands at conferences symbolize the hope for cooperation, while peace rallies around the world show the public's desire for a non-violent solution. However, with time seemingly running out, the world holds its breath, bracing for the possibility of a conflict that no one can afford. As the sun rises over cities and military convoys move at dawn, the urgency of the situation becomes ever more apparent. The world watches, hoping for peace but preparing for the worst. To understand the current predicament, one must delve into the complex history of Iran's nuclear program. This journey begins in the 1950s, when Iran's nuclear ambitions were first kindled under the Shah's regime, with the support of Western nations, including the United States. The initial goal was to harness nuclear energy for peaceful purposes, such as electricity generation and medical research. For decades, Iran has insisted that its nuclear ambitions are purely peaceful, geared towards energy production and scientific research. The country has invested heavily in nuclear technology, building reactors and training scientists to advance its capabilities. However, the international community, particularly the West, has remained skeptical. Concerns have been raised about the potential for Iran to divert its nuclear technology towards developing nuclear weapons, a fear that has been exacerbated by Iran's secretive nature and lack of transparency in its nuclear activities. The signing of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, in 2015 offered a glimmer of hope. This agreement was seen as a significant diplomatic breakthrough, aiming to curb Iran's nuclear capabilities while providing economic relief to the country. This landmark agreement, negotiated between Iran and 6 world powers, placed strict limitations on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for the lifting of economic sanctions. The JCPOA included rigorous monitoring and verification mechanisms to ensure compliance, which were overseen by the International Atomic Energy Agency. However, this hard-won diplomatic achievement began to unravel in 2018 when the Trump administration unilaterally withdrew the U.S. from the JCPOA, reimposing crippling sanctions on Iran. This decision was justified by claims that the deal was insufficient in preventing Iran from eventually developing nuclear weapons. The decision to abandon the agreement was met with widespread criticism, with many arguing that it would only embolden Iran to resume its nuclear activities. Critics pointed out that the withdrawal undermined years of diplomatic efforts and could lead to increased instability in the Middle East. Unfortunately, those fears have materialized. In response to the U.S. withdrawal and the reimposition of sanctions, Iran has gradually rolled back its commitments under the JCPOA, resuming activities that were previously restricted. Since the U.S. withdrawal, Iran has gradually increased its uranium enrichment levels, edging closer to the threshold required for weapons-grade material. This escalation has reignited tensions and raised the specter of a potential nuclear arms race in the region, making the future of Iran's nuclear program a critical issue on the global stage. The recent briefing by Jake Sullivan to President Biden highlights the growing sense of urgency surrounding Iran's nuclear program. The situation has been escalating over the past few months, with intelligence reports indicating that Iran is closer than ever to achieving a significant milestone in its nuclear capabilities. This development has set off alarm bells in Washington and among its allies, who are now scrambling to formulate a coherent and effective response. The briefing, described as prudent scenario planning, was prompted by concerns that Iran might attempt a rapid acceleration of its nuclear activities. This acceleration could potentially bring them to the threshold of developing a nuclear weapon, a scenario that the international community has long sought to prevent. The stakes are incredibly high, and the margin for error is slim. This concern is particularly acute given the upcoming U.S. presidential inauguration on January 20, 2025. The transition of power in the United States is always a period of uncertainty, and adversaries may see it as a moment of vulnerability. The current administration is keenly aware of this, and is working tirelessly to ensure that any potential threats are mitigated. The potential for a change in administration, particularly with the possibility of a more hawkish stance towards Iran, has raised fears of a security vacuum. A new administration might take a harder line, which could lead to increased tensions and a potential escalation of conflict. This is a delicate balancing act, requiring careful diplomacy and strategic foresight. Iranian hardliners might see this period of transition as an opportunity to make significant strides in their nuclear program, potentially pushing the region to the brink of conflict. The possibility of a nuclear-armed Iran is a scenario that many in the international community find unacceptable, and it could lead to a new arms race in the Middle East. Adding to the complexity of the situation is the volatile political landscape within Iran itself. Internal power struggles and public discontent have created an environment of uncertainty. The Iranian government is under pressure from both hardline factions and a populace that is increasingly frustrated with economic hardships and lack of political freedoms. There are concerns that hardline factions within the Iranian government, skeptical of any negotiations with the West, might be gaining influence. These factions are often opposed to any form of compromise and could push for more aggressive policies, further complicating diplomatic efforts. With each passing day, the window of opportunity for a diplomatic solution appears to be narrowing. The urgency to find a peaceful resolution is palpable, and the stakes could not be higher. Diplomatic channels are being utilized to their fullest extent, but time is running out. The international community must act swiftly and decisively to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. The consequences of inaction could be dire, leading to increased instability in an already volatile region. It is a race against time, and the world is watching closely. The potential consequences of a nuclear-armed Iran are too dire to contemplate. It would dramatically alter the geopolitical landscape with repercussions extending far beyond the Middle East. A nuclear-armed Iran would embolden Tehran, allowing it to project its power more assertively throughout the region. This could lead to a cascade of nuclear proliferation, with other regional powers like Saudi Arabia feeling compelled to develop their own nuclear deterrents. The Middle East, already a tinderbox of tensions and rivalries, could descend into chaos. The risk of miscalculation or accidental escalation would increase exponentially, with the potential for a regional nuclear conflagration looming large. Furthermore, a nuclear-armed Iran would pose a direct threat to U.S. interests and allies in the region, including Israel. It could also embolden terrorist organizations, potentially providing them with access to nuclear materials or expertise. In these uncertain times, humanity finds itself at a crossroads. We are facing challenges that test the very fabric of our existence. From climate change to geopolitical tensions, the stakes have never been higher. It's a moment that calls for reflection, resilience, and above all, action. As we navigate these turbulent waters, we must remember that our choices today will shape the world of tomorrow. It's not just about survival, it's about ensuring a future where we can thrive. So, what will we choose? How will we respond to this existential crisis? The answers lie within us, waiting to be realized. The geopolitical landscape is ever-changing, much like shifting sands in a desert. Nations rise and fall, alliances form and dissolve, and the balance of power is in constant flux. In this scene we explore how recent events have reshaped the global stage and what it means for the future. War is never without cost. Beyond the immediate loss of life and destruction, the long-term repercussions can be devastating. Economies are crippled, societies are fractured, and the human toll is immeasurable. In this scene, we delve into the true costs of conflict and the heavy burden it places on all involved. Amidst the chaos and turmoil, there are always glimmers of hope. Whether through diplomacy, humanitarian efforts, or grassroots movements, the potential for positive change remains. In this scene, we highlight stories of resilience and the enduring human spirit that strives for a better tomorrow. The time for action is now. The challenges we face are immense, but so too are the opportunities for making a difference. In this final scene, we call upon leaders, communities, and individuals to take urgent steps towards creating a more just and peaceful world. The future is in our hands.